Dobar dan. That means good day. This is TalkCast PDX. We're on the web at talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich. Welcome. Episode 37 today. Gonna call it Strange Days. When I do my reading, I triangulate press. I read press out of Korea, Japan, Asia broadly, which mostly comes from China, Europe, Russia, and other places, and not much, going on. I suppose the big news is President Biden formally renominated Chairman Powell for another term as the chair of the Federal Reserve. He had Chairman Powell and I guess it would be Governor Brainard doing like a joint tour, and he appointed Powell or reappointed Powell for another 4 years, and Ms. Brainard as assistant chairman. And those go before the Senate. There's a few Democratic senators that'll make the process longer than it should be, but he was renominated. So that ambiguity is gone. In the news, it's just Europe is the big news. Australia, too. In Australia, I mean, as hard as this is to imagine, but it's true, a high school, a middle school, however old children are, 14, 15, 16, like that, the kids are at school, they show up with a pop-up vaccination clinic, and they just evacuate the kids out of class, run them through a line, get them all vaccinated without prior notification or parental consent, and that's in Australia. That and other little things they're doing sent massive amounts of people into the streets over the weekend. If you believe the news feeds, all the protests ended, roughly at midnight on Sunday. I don't know how accurate that is, or if they just decided to stop covering them. Even worse, Australia is broken into, like we have states, they apparently have territories, and their Northern Territory. I read this and I didn't believe it, right? So since they speak English, I went and I looked at the actual speeches of the officials involved. And I can tell you that this actually happened or is happening. They have a Northern Territory. And in the Northern Territory, they implemented what's called a hard lockdown. Residents of some town named Benjair and Rockhole, Benjair and Rockhole, segregated into vaccinated and unvaccinated. Vaccinated persons can leave the house for like 5 reasons, go to the store, go do this, go do that. Unvaccinated persons can only leave for medical treatment in the case of an emergency, like if the house catches on fire, or if required by law enforcement. They're testing the entire population, and if your tests come back positive, they mandatorily, in other words, without your consent or with, doesn't matter, take you off and put you in Hal Springs quarantine camp, all right, which is, essentially a camp. And they round up and ship off what they call positive cases and close contacts. In the announcement, the guy that runs the territory for the government, guy by the name of Michael Gunner, said during his press conference, and this was a couple of days ago, that they had 9 cases and a number of close contacts that were already transferred to this quarantine camp. And he says they have identified 38 additional cases and close contacts. And during his press conference, he says, we're actively collecting those people now and take them. And then he also said that number will go up. He gave a big warm thanks to he said he called the Prime Minister of the country and got troops from the Australia Defence Forces and trucks from the Australia Defence Forces to round up these cases in close contacts and evacuate them to the quarantine camp. During his press conference, he never used the word people. Men were rounding up men, women, children. And, he just said that they were quote unquote cases and close contacts. We are removing cases and close contacts, not people, all right, or men, women, or children, but cases and close contacts. I can't read everything, but to my reading, no Western politician that I am aware of in any European or other English speaking country has denounced the practice. Certainly not the president or any member of Congress that I'm aware of. I don't think they think about what they're doing. All right. So like, if they do this, what's the practical difference in between this and Chinese treatment of Uyghurs or Russian treatment of the southern portions of Chechnya or other things that we like to complain about? I mean, it's pretty amazing. Second place for this, vaccine totalitarianism, I guess is a good word, taking people off unwilling to even to quarantine camps. That's pretty good. But second place is Austria. Mandatory vaccination restrictions by February 1st, 2022. Current lockdowns on unvaccinated. In Austria, the system is really weird. Unvaccinated persons are allowed to go to work, and I saw a English-speaking journalist who also speaks, I guess it's German, what they speak over there, or Austrian, I don't know. Their linguistics different. But anyway, he spoke both languages, and he was interviewing people in food service at like a government parliament building. In other words, they serve them the food in the cafeteria and stuff. And they're allowed to work there, and they're allowed to serve these people food, right? But for the unvaccinated one, as soon as their shifts end, they're not allowed to stay on premises. They're not allowed to eat there themselves, etc. They just have to, go home and quarantine. And these measures caused big demonstrations all last week. Principally the large ones were in Australia and Croatia and Austria and the Netherlands and in Italy. And if you read the Asian press, like the Koreans, they don't treat it as a story. It's kind of like a, hey, look what's happening over here, type of thing. It's not like front page news or anything, but but they mention it. And the estimates of the crowd sizes in between, whether it's Western English-speaking press or European press and the Asian press, differ dramatically, like by more than 3x. And some of the demonstrations, just looking at pictures, look reasonably large. So it's that happened, but I mean, you'd never know it if you just stick to your American press, like nothing in the New York Times or anything. Or maybe a small article, certainly not front page news that I saw. There was a presenter also that I saw that he compared the relationship of the governments of these countries to an abusive relationship with a spouse or significant other. And he said that they have guidelines for interpersonal relationships to see if you're in a abusive relationship. Does your spouse or significant other stop you from seeing friends and family? Do they monitor your phones and emails? Do they control the finances and where you work? Do they tell you that this is for your own good? Do they dismiss your opinion? They don't allow you to ask questions. They tell you you're crazy and that nobody agrees with you. And they shame you for being stupid or selfish. And those are some of the questions to determine if you're in an interpersonal relationship. And this guy was saying that if you apply that same criteria to the government, that, look at the answers you get. again, it's all well and good. I don't think that they can do that in the United States. We're too vast geographically, too many differing opinions, too much, different state rules here and there, maybe in little pockets here and there. But it has long-term implications that I'm not sure anybody's considering. The elections in Virginia, you can argue about the cause. A lot of people say that it's basically because they angered the working mothers or mothers of children by disrupting school schedules and this and that. And but in this country in particular, I don't really care how it resolves itself. I do care if it goes by the Australian model, but I mean, the pandemic's over, it fizzles out, whatever. You're not going to be able to reasonably suggest any kind of Second Amendment restrictions, for example. People laugh at you. It will significantly move these authoritarian measures. Even attempting to implement them will move society to the right over the years, a generation, maybe two. And I'm not sure anybody's considering that. The long-term implications makes me question whether they know what they're doing. In other stuff that I saw, President Biden the Biden administration more properly, is trying to reduce the price of gasoline, natural gas, heating oil, things of that nature, petroleum, energy products, because the inflation is severe and growing. He announced 50 million barrels. Oh, shit. I forgot to turn off the ringer on my phone. Excuse me. There, ringer's off. But he
that scared me for a second. I thought we were having some kind of invasion.
Yeah, that's my ringtone is an air raid siren. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, he announced that he was going to release 50 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and that sounds good. But we use 20 million barrels a day in the United States, so that's 2.5 days worth. He wants to increase refining capacity for gasoline in particular to bring down the cost of gasoline to essentially consumers. And when you refine a barrel of oil, they do it in a thing called a fractionation tower, and you get the heavy grades off first and so on. But the less diesel that you make, the more gasoline that you can make out of a barrel of oil. But that would cause a shortage in diesel, and he doesn't want to do that either. So he agreed to import 1.2 million tons a month of already refined diesel fuel. And we're importing it from our dear friends, the Russians, because they're the only people that have it. Coming over on ships, Port of Philadelphia, ports in Connecticut, and the Gulf Coast, down Texas way, Louisiana. But so we're importing 1.2 million tons of diesel from the Russians. Arby's, the sandwich chain, is launching an 80-proof French fry flavored vodka. And I'll certainly go get a bottle of that just to see how it works. I'm unclear how I'm going to put the ketchup on it. I'll let you know about that, though. There's what they did for cannabis with all the cannabis startups, medical cannabis and stuff. There was a startup that was funded for big money to do the same with psychedelic mushrooms. And that's neither here nor there, but they call themselves, quote unquote, psycho pioneers. I thought that was funny. There was a study of pandemic habits in advanced dermatology where they queried people who had been spending more time with their spouses or partners during the pandemic. And they found that 79% said that their partner needs to lose some weight. 69% wish their partner groomed themselves differently or better. 63% said their partner looks worse than before the pandemic. 57% say their partner has gained weight. 57% say that they find their partners less attractive. 55% are embarrassed of how their partner looks. And 52% say their partner dressing much more casually, not paying attention to their appearance. I'm guilty of a few of those things. For example, my New Year's resolution this year was to lose 10 pounds, and it's going real well. I only have 15 pounds to go. So that was, so I'm guilty of that. And, none of this is phasing the markets. So, Justin, if you could put up graph number 1, please. This is just the graph we've been looking at for whatever it's been the last 4 weeks now. It just runs from June 30th of 2021 through November 22nd, which was yesterday. Shows the S&P 500, the channel that the Fed was pushing it up in. You can see the graph ended yesterday with the S&P at 4683. Last Thursday, which would have been November 18th, it hit a new all-time high, 4704.96 or something, but 4705. Hit a new all-time high on Thursday of last week, skidded a little bit on Friday, skidded a little bit more yesterday, and as I looked this morning, whatever that was, 10, 20 minutes ago, it was down about 15 points. I don't know what it is right now, but in other words, it recovered the channel, but it looks like it's moving up on or near the bottom of the channel. So if it does that through the end of the year, it'll finish at about 4,900, as I recall. I would have to calculate that out, but we're getting there. Thanksgiving is on Thursday. It's Tuesday, so we're getting to that time of year. But that's there's articles in the. You can take the graph down, please. There's articles in the paper about that the market skidded on the announcement of Chairman Powell's renomination and so on, but not, 16 points, whatever that is, 0.02%. So essentially flat. He's not going to do anything before his confirmation hearings are finished, mind you. This was just the nomination. I expect that they'll do their best to keep the stock market in that channel until at least the nomination process is done, right? So I would expect that all in all, by the end of the year, you'll be something approaching 47 to 4,900. For last week, which was I'm going to go back. The Croatians. I talked about those demonstrations. I forgot to mention the Croatians. I am Croatian. All my relatives are Croatian. The generations older than me, about half of them were born in Croatia. All the generations older than I am speak it fluently and so on. And I have relatives over there, that kind of thing. And their system is funny, right? All right, so they have like we have states, they have provinces, but they don't have. There's only 4.5 million. It's a small country, but they're broken up into provinces, and they quote unquote have a federal government, but it doesn't have much authority. Everything is broken down into provincial police forces and this and that. They have a national security service, but again, it just oversees these provincial things. And on this vaccination mandate in their country, they have started forming battalions of 2,500 men apiece in some of these provinces to make sure that the federal government doesn't try and get funny, if you will. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But those people, they fight. The last time that they fought in large numbers was in 1992. I guess, and that was against the what's now Bosnia Herzegovina and Serbia, Kosovo, like that. But so I thought that was funny. Anyway, back to the markets for last week, from Monday to Friday. The markets were only up 15.11 points, but that's 0.32%. So if you had one of our portfolios, you should have gained $320. Our top 30s, where we just take the top 30 stocks and then one we cap weight and one we equal weight. The cap weighted portfolio went up $1,872. So, huge by comparison to the expected $300 gain. And when you equal weight the same stocks, top 30 stocks, which represent more than 50% of the value of the S&P 500, all 30, it only went up 213. The primary difference in there is if you weight them by capitalization, you end up owning a lot more Apple and Tesla and Amazon and Nvidia than if you equal weight them. And that made a $1,500 difference on a $100,000 portfolio last week, or owning the largest stocks. When you when you do just the top 30 stocks, you have a concentration in internet technology, communication services, and that's principally it. If you want to avoid that skew and you take the top 3 stocks from every sector of the S&P and make a portfolio out of that, that one lost $414 because the energy sector was down, the finance sector was down, the healthcare sector was down, and the industrial sector was down, and materials sector was down last week. But if you just own the top 30 stocks, you don't have much exposure to those, so your portfolios do a lot better. Large liquid leaders, which is just my discretionary portfolio, lost $728, but the hedges returned $770, so I made $41. And as of last Friday, November 19th, I let them take away the stock that I had. I had sold covered calls, and I just let the stock go away. In Apple and Facebook and 3M Company and Microsoft. I let them take the stock away from me. So I'm currently 83% cash. If we look at the individual stocks that went up and down, Tesla gained 10.03%, excuse me. Elon Musk, doing his usual promotional stuff, talking about doing additional business with Microsoft, just, the promotional stuff, that and recovering from the massive sales that he made over the last 2 weeks, which sent the stock down about 15%. So even though he took $10 billion out, the stock's almost back to where it was. But anyway, the stock was up 10% last week. Home Depot stock rose, what is that? 9.7%, 9.68%. Good earnings. They had their earnings call. They report a little late, them and Lowe's. If you'll recall, 2 quarters ago, I used to own the stock and I dumped it because the CEO got on the call and an analyst from Goldman said, "How is inflation going to hurt your business?" And he launched into a discussion about how inflation was going to hurt his business going forward, and absolutely destroyed his stock on good earnings. So I got rid of it at that point, had a small gain. So just, don't want to put up with him. But this time he said, "Oh, well, it turns out that," just as I was talking about several months ago, that people aren't going to stop home beautification projects. They're not going to say, "Oh, inflation's too high," and leave the sheetrock off the kitchen walls. They're going to, and he said that he sees residential upgrades, to residential houses supporting his business, through the end of the year. So the stock was up 9.7%, which is too much. The point I want to make is these 10% moves, in these huge companies is not, anything that goes up that quickly can go down even more quickly. That's all I'll say about it. Nvidia went up 8.5% again. What is the PDE on Nvidia is up to about 70-1, I think, something of that nature. The reason that it went up this week is a bunch of analysts tied the stock price movement to crypto. In other words, that it correlated with crypto. And I talked about that last week, how money appears to be flowing from the stock market into crypto, out of crypto into the stock market. But because crypto is the way it is, not broadly held, younger, and so on, apparently it only goes into certain stocks, and NVIDIA is one of those stocks, so it's up 8.5%. Apple was up 7.04%, which is interesting. The market capitalization of Apple is roughly $2.5 trillion. So 7% of 2.5 trillion is roughly 400 billion in a week. And what could increase the market? That's more than the market capitalization of ExxonMobil, for example, or pretty much most other stocks. So what could make it that much more valuable in a week? Turns out the company had a press release that said that they think that they can solve this automated driving program by 2025. They think people have been saying that. Elon Musk was going to do it. Everybody was going to do it. Nobody has done it. But they said they think they can, and you can now repair your own iPhone, or they'll sell you the parts, I guess. Colossally bad idea. These things, when they seal them up, are what's called a Faraday cage. The electronics in them typically run at 2.8 volts is their operating voltage, so they're very sensitive. And any kind of static discharge into or out of the phone, once the phone case is open, ruins the phone because it fries the chips. So if you repair one of these things, your table has to be grounded, your tools have to be grounded, you have to be grounded, the device itself has to be grounded, and so on. So it takes some good expertise. And I think that's why they did it, because what's going to happen in most cases is the guy's going to ruin his phone. Oh, gee, let's replace a screen, right? He opens it up, pulls off the old screen, puts a new screen on, but he forgot to zero himself and everything else for static charge, and then the phone won't work. And then he takes the phone into a certified repair shop, and they say it's fried. You have to get a new one. So it actually increases sales for them. And the number of people that actually have the technical knowledge to properly repair the phone is so small that it sounds good. You can repair your own phone, but what it really does is, increase sales for the company. But anyway, their stock was up 7.04% on that news. Yeah, what a Lowe's company. Same story as Home Depot. We see big consumer action. And then you had two stocks that were up more than 4%, less than 5%, and that included Amazon and Adobe Systems. And then you had two stocks that were up more than 3%, but less than 4%, and that was Nike. And this is out of our 54 stocks. And this was out of Nike and Costco. Costco, good stock. I like Costco. Then you had two stocks that were up more than 2, less than 3, which is Pfizer. Just vaccine mandates are good for Pfizer. And NEE, which is NextEra Energy, which is a utility, but it's a solar company. And then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stocks up more than 1%, but less than 2, and that included Microsoft and Facebook. And then you had 6 stocks that were up, but up less than 1%, and that included Google, Procter & Gamble, Sherwin-Williams, Broadcom. And then you had 1, 2, 3 stocks. No, only one stock, that was down, but down less than 1%, and that was Netflix, fell 0.5%. And then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stocks that were down more than 1%, but less than 2%, and that included Abbott Laboratories, Johnson & Johnson, healthcare sector, Intel, Honeywell. And then you had 6, 7, 8 stocks that were down more than 2%, but less than 3%. And in there you had Chevron and Verizon and Comcast and UPS. And then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stocks that were down more than 3%, but less than 4%. And that would be Kinder Morgan, Bank America, AT&T, Disney, JP Morgan, Target, Walmart, ConocoPhillips, APD is Air Products. And those stocks all fell 4%, or in between 3 and 4%. You had 1, 2, 3, 4 stocks that fell more than 4%, but less than 5%, and those were American Tower, United Health, Philip Morris, and ExxonMobil, energy sector again. So, but Last week, there were 32 stocks that were down in our 54, and these are the largest. Yeah, they contain the largest 33, plus another spattering of stocks that are in the largest 50. But 32 of them were down, 22 of them were up, and yet the entire market, as measured by the S&P, was up, 0.32% for the week. But the number of stocks that were down clearly outweighed the number of stocks that were up. So the only thing that rose the index last week was Tesla and Home Depot and Nvidia and Apple, in particularly Tesla and Apple, because Apple's either the number one or two company. It used to be number two behind Microsoft, but now that it's up 7%, it's probably regained its position as number one. And the stocks that went down more than 5% last week, there were 4 of them. Visa, you'll remember that Visa went down 5.3% and MasterCard went down 6.5%. Your credit card clearing concerns, again, they cut off the bottom portion of the population from all their pandemic benefits on September 2nd, and it's really starting to show up in credit card clearing and other transfers. So Visa and MasterCard are falling. Cisco Systems went down 6.28%. Earnings, showed growth and this and that, but not enough. And PayPal was down 7%. We've talked extensively about PayPal, how it's just poorly managed. And, most stocks were down. Market was up, crawling along the bottom of the channel. Powell's renominated. Now he needs to get through the confirmation hearings. It'll be interesting. Chuck Schumer's in charge of that, so we'll see if Schumer makes it a priority and tries to do it by the end of the year, or if he puts it off until after the Christmas recess. I don't have any speculation. It would be better for the markets if he did it before the end of the year, but who knows? Today's Tuesday. This has been the Bogdanich perspective. Kind of a slow week, like I say. Thursday's Thanksgiving. Have a good holiday. And join us next Tuesday. Hopefully more will have happened. TalkCast PDX. Tuesdays, always Tuesdays, 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific for live stream. Or anytime. TalkCast PDX, wherever you want to find it. And do widzenia. And that means goodbye.